Hello and good morning. I'm Philippa Haynes.
And I'm Mark Lee. Welcome to another episode of the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast.
This is where we showcase and celebrate successful accountants who have been running their own practice successfully for a good few years and whose stories can inspire and encourage other accountants around the UK. And we have a really special guest today.
Indeed, we always ask our guests to share their story, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned on the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. If you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Philippa or myself.
So today we are really delighted to introduce Jonathan Ford, Director of Writers Tax Limited.
Yeah, Jonathan runs the firm of chartered accountants that specialises in helping authors, script writers and other professional writers with their tax and accounting needs. And I first came across Jonathan when I was a judge for the Accounting Excellence Awards, and his entry really stood out. So I was thrilled when he won not only the Specialist Team of the Year award, but also the New Firm of the Year award 2022. As you will hear, Jonathan is passionate about niche accountancy, has a vast experience in the media industry, and is co-author of the #1 bestseller, Writers and Artists Yearbook.
Brilliant. So welcome to the podcast, Jonathan. Please just add a little bit more information about you if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the first thing I have to say with Writers Tax is I'm very much 50% of Writers Tax. Yeah. So there's me and Louise, my wife. We're both chartered accountants, and yeah, she's the powerhouse who actually does all the work, whereas I sort of appear on podcasts and things to talk about what she does. So yeah, in terms of history, I did a business degree. Found that with the accountancy exams, I did better in those with the same amount of effort. So naturally, the efficiency of being a bit lazy meant I steered in that direction. I did a placement year with PW in Liverpool, and then went back to them after university to finish off and qualify. And PW in Liverpool was a really unusual firm at the time. Because most offices were doing things like, PLCs and banks and ICI and things. And we were doing like scrap metal dealers and local card shops. I have no idea sort of why that was the case, but it gave me sort of that kind of big firm quality of service, but there's actually dealing with quite smaller firms. I spent a couple of years as a manager at Grant Thornton, and then a few years as the in-house accountant for Brookside and Hollyoaks, which was a really interesting time. Steered me towards having an interest in the media side of things. And then in 1999, I set up my own practice. That grew. We ended up with about 17 staff. And then Louise and I exited that in 2020 to concentrate on Writers Tax. And yeah, here we are now, 4 years later. So
Fantastic. Well, we always like to dig deep into the person behind the accountant, and we should get through that with a few focused questions over the next 30 minutes or so. I'll start with a sort of a combination question. You told us how you got into accountancy. So why was it that you started Writers Tax? No, okay, I'll leave it at that for the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So we within the old firm, we developed, mostly with Louise actually, just this specialism, which started really as script writers, but then that sort of morphed into writers. And she enjoyed doing it. I was interested in it. They were nice people. And so when we found ourselves sort of locked in our house during COVID, we just thought we'd always had this sort of longer term plan that we might do it. And I think COVID just accelerated that, that this would be quite a nice way to actually, run a practice and run it from home. And not have the worry of offices or staff or any of that, and that we would just focus really on what we enjoyed doing and what we were good at. So we were I suppose, lucky enough that we got a bit of a head start, because by exiting, we did have some of our previous clients come with us as part of the agreement. And then, yeah, we were up and running and just trying to build that practice. And then we reached a point about 2 years ago where we started to cap how much work we were taking on at the time.
Yeah, tell us a bit more about that, because that's quite a big theme, isn't it? About this no growth, or maybe growth enough or something. I don't know what you call it, but
yeah, I mean, I suppose I do call it no growth, but I mean, the reality is that we've grown in the last 2 years since we stopped trying to grow. We've probably grown about 10% year on year, and I think what we find is that because we're doing nothing in terms of marketing, nothing in terms of staff development, all of our time really is either making our processes more efficient or being productive with work. So it has taken us from a position where I suppose there was quite a lot of distractions and non-productive time to being like really super efficient with what we do. And yeah, we're constantly looking at ways that we can do things a bit quicker, a bit better, how we can use technology to help with that. So it's made the practice very, very lean. So yeah, I think it's trying to play to our strengths really as well.
Can I just go back then, Jonathan? Did I understand correctly? You started a practice in 1999, and within a year or so, you had 17 staff. Did you?
No. We set it up in 1999, and we exited in 2020. So it's 21 years to get that far.
That's right. More carefully.
Sums.
It's numbers, isn't it?
So one of the things you were saying, but kind of when we were chatting, waiting to go live, was that, you know, with this second firm, this second business that you've set up, you were able to learn from what you've done in the sort of 20 years before and kind of insert that. And there were all kinds of things around growth and you know, just some really strong learnings or pillars of learning that you've kind of taken forward with you. Do you want to just tell us a bit about that?
One of the things that I was mentioning earlier is the Peter Principle. So it's where you're promoted in an organization, you're promoted to the level of your own incompetence. And I think that can also be prevalent in firms of accountants, where you grow to a stage where you can't necessarily, you're not the best person to be running that practice, and you've exhausted your skill set, and that's not necessarily the best place to be at. So what we were trying to do when we set this second firm up is to learn from that and not grow to the extent that we were unable really to run the business really well. So that was the first learning, to sort of try and play to our strengths, to actually we feel like we're better at being accountants than we are at being business people. So we set our stall out very much like that, and also that we've really trying to focus on having good clients, because good clients just make everything so much easier in your practice. And I think not having targets to keep growing the number of clients allows you to be a lot more focused on having really, really good clients within the firm.
And do you get those presumably through recommendations, referrals, more than anything? Does that mean you turn away what might become bad clients? Are you able to sift them at the outset?
So I think having a niche firstly puts us in a position where we're far more likely to come across people who are the sort of clients that we want to deal with. Yeah. So that sort of narrows the field down a bit, and then having we do turn away a lot of work. We actually don't so much turn it away as we put it on a waiting list. So at the minute we've got about, I mean, in theory, we've got about 150 people on a waiting list.
Wow.
I think the reality is that some of those have been on the list for over a year. So if we were to call them up, they would probably tell us to get lost. But then within that waiting list, we would have a little bit of freedom really to pick and choose who we want to work with. So we do pick. You're more likely to become a client if we think that you're a better fit for us, and we think they're going to be interesting people to work with. So yeah, that helps us, I think, get good clients.
And does that mean at that stage, when they're on the waiting list, do they already know what sort of fees they're likely to be paying if you say yes and take them on?
That isn't something that we would have communicated to them at that point. A lot of clients or prospects are coming to us via referral. So there's lots of Facebook groups and things that authors are in. And so I think by the time they're approaching us, they have got a pretty good idea that we're not like the cheapest firm, and they've got some expectation of fees. But I mean, one example of the power of the waiting list for me was we had one chap who signed up with us about 2 months ago, and he'd been on the waiting list for about 9 months. And he kept getting in touch with us periodically to say, you know, like can I join yet? But his career, he makes all his money from selling negotiation skills. So he's written books on it. He does like international seminars on it. This is his niche, his negotiation skills. And I was thinking, what's this going to be like when we have this sort of chat about fees, given his one purpose in life is negotiating, and nothing, like not a murmur about the fees. They were totally accepted without any question, because how can you can't spend 9 months on a waiting list, get to the front of the queue and then start quibbling.
Don't tell anybody who that is. I know another. I know I've got somebody else.
There's a few.
Who is known in his personal life for not negotiating.
Right.
And I know it's not the same person. Brilliant.
Yeah. But you were saying that the waiting list, and I liken it to Lorraine Ellison's no list as well, actually, but slightly different, but just as powerful. I mean, I think you were saying that it what it means is you know, you're able to manage the people that you work with, and you don't have to push somebody who isn't ideal down the chain or anything like that. You know, you're just really working with clients who, you know, are like you. I mean, I talk a lot about the ideal client. That's my kind of area of specialism with brand and kind of niching. But I think, you know, that they're all very big words. They're all quite fashionable at the moment. But the reality is, if you use it with purpose and you know what you're doing, it can actually be really, really powerful, can't it?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, for us, the niching and the waiting list are sort of shortcuts to doing that process. The main thing, I mean, the waiting list never came about as some sort of like marketing bit of pizzazz that we thought, I know what we'll do. We'll tell people we've got a waiting list and we might get more interest because of that. It came about genuinely because we were like, we don't want to take any more work on. We're busy. And then that's never really a definite point. You then find yourself a bit later on in the year where you go, actually, we can expand a little bit. We can take a few more on. But the key for me with the waiting list has been that there is just a shift in power in the relationship at the prospect stage. And, you know, what that means is that our prospects want us to be their accountant more than we need them to be our client.
Yeah.
And when you've got that shift in power, everything becomes a lot easier. You don't have to negotiate on fees. You can say, this is how we work. You must use Xero, which is the software that we've chosen to use, but you have no choice. You must use it. We're not going to use your spreadsheet or something else because we're not familiar with it. You must have our fee protection. You must pay monthly by direct debit. You must pay an alignment fee. Yeah. So we get a power to tell clients how to do things that I don't think a lot of firms necessarily enjoy, and the waiting list has helped us do that. And another strange one that we've had, again because of the waiting list, we had a client get in touch about a month ago who said, I'm having a really quiet time. I don't really need you anymore, but I want to keep you because I don't want to get off the ride in case I can't get back on again. And that was a bit mind-blowing, really, that there might actually be people who want to keep with us simply because they might need us in the future, when they don't need us now. So yeah, it's been, as I say, it's been a real eye-opener in a lot of senses. It's not something that we did deliberately, but it's a place that we've now found ourselves in.
I love that, and some great examples there. Alignment fee, I think I could guess what that is, but explain the benefit of those who haven't heard.
Sorry, so if somebody's got a March year end and they join us in June, then we would charge them 3 months of fees, to sort of catch up. So by the time we get to a client's year end, they've paid us a year's worth of fees by their year end.
Brilliant.
Is how we do it. So
very, very sensible. And you said earlier that you'd be happy sharing turnover and the like, and I'm curious, but feel free to do that. Compared to what you were earning in the larger practice before you sold out, is your family income comparable with that now? Is it less? Is it more? How does it compare?
Yeah. So I suppose it's not really fair on the old firm to sort of talk about the financial position, because we've left that in good hands, and that continues. So from the new firm's position, I'm just conscious that when we talk about it just being me and Louise, and we talk about having no staff and no offices, work from home, no subbies, that sort of no growth side of things can feel a little bit, maybe, I don't know, just a bit tame, I suppose would be a word. But in terms of turnover, we've just completed our March year end. Our sales for the last year were 420,000, which I know from being in like Facebook groups and things, that's probably higher than I think people would generally expect. Sort of 2 people do. I know other practitioners out there who are absolutely smashing it and doing working on their own, and doing better than we're doing. But I think it's probably higher than people would anticipate you can do with just 2 people.
I think you're absolutely right, and thank you for sharing that. And I understand the reason for not saying anything beyond that. And absolutely, in my experience, that is very much at the upper end of what sole practitioners or a 2-person practice is ever likely to earn. And the arguments that some commentators make, you have to grow, clearly you don't. Once you're earning a decent living, which I'm sure you are, then it's not a question of grow or stagnate. It's like having a good job and being well paid and just getting inflationary increases. If you're happy doing what you're doing and you don't have the stresses and strains of offices and staff and or of having to market because you've built the reputation, the credibility and the connections, why would you need to grow? I 100% agree with your strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an alternative. So, for those people out there who are looking to grow their firms and looking for £1 million plus turnover practices, brilliant. There's but that isn't for us, and that's not what we want to do. And I think there's a place in the world for practitioners who go, do you know what, I can earn a good living, I can deal with the sort of people I want to deal with. Accountancy is a fabulous industry to make your own choices. To if you want to deal with DJs and and travel to New York to see what the, tax accountants in New York are doing for DJs, and you do it, so you've got the world is your absolute oyster with accountancy. And I think keeping it small allows you to just really focus on what you're interested in doing.
And I think, I mean, I love this because, you talked about having a strategy, and actually, I think, Mark, you were saying that they actually, your firm actually won an award for that, about, you were talking about growth, but actually was a no growth, but even so, it was a strategy. And I think what's coming through really strongly is you're very clear about what you are. So, you were talking about the 3 pillars, which is ideal clients, niche, waiting list, which really works for you. But you're also really clear about what you're not. So, you were saying we are very good at doing the accountancy bit. We're not business advice or whatever it is, but in knowing what you are, you can have a really clear strategy and make it very strong, even if there are only 2 of you. And as you were saying, your turnover, not that I'm particularly au fait with that, but Mark seems to think that that's good, and it sounds good to me. So it's a really strong case for being very clear about what you are, I think.
Very, very much. And of course, Jonathan has the benefit of, because there's Jonathan and Louise working together, they've got each other to bounce things around with and to discuss things. Many of the sole practitioners who choose to work with me for one-to-one mentoring are using me as that sounding board, that external perspective, give an external perspective to support, encourage, cajole, challenge, or whatever. But I think a lot of people who are looking to build bigger practices, and Philippa and I both do this in our own way. We talk about what's your real objective is. What is it you want to achieve? And many accountants want to earn a decent living doing what they enjoy, and they think that more turnover will help them get there, but they need more staff in order to service that turnover. And they don't necessarily want the staff. I mentioned another client of mine who's also in a specialist niche. And like yourself, she's effectively got a waiting list. And she's taking on staff in order to service it, even though she doesn't really want staff. But we've talked through the challenges and how to address that. And she's, it's the least worst option she feels is managing the staff and taking on the clients, because she doesn't want to let any clients down. Whether that will last, time will tell. But at least we've talked it through.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the whole sort of no growth kind of strategy that we've talked about, the analogy I use is it's a boating one. And that we've found ourselves in a bay where we're quite happy and the food's nice and the weather's great. But you have to be active to stay there. But if you were on a boat, you couldn't just stay on the boat because it would float around, it would blow off course, it'd hit the rocks. So we have to very deliberately do things to stay where we are, including deciding whether we still want to stay there. So if there comes a point where we decide we want to do something different, we'll do something different. But for now, we're happy doing all the things that we need to do to just stay where we are. And for us, I know we wouldn't do what your client is looking to do. We would rather turn work away. And we've had some interesting discussions between ourselves, because very much what we are trying to do with this practice is create a practice that gives us the lifestyle that we want. And part of that is financial, but part of that is time. And part of that is stress, or avoiding it.
I was going to say lack of it, yes.
And there is always that trade-off, between those things. So we decided last year, we reduced our days so that we do a 9-day fortnight now. And so that was a wall. What do we do? Do we, we've decided we have got a little bit more time. Do we have a day off a fortnight, or do we try and earn more money? And we made the decision on that occasion that we'd actually reduce our hours. So yeah, it's I say it's a very active position that we're in, rather than we're not growing because we're not really trying.
Yeah,
So
fabulous strategy, and I'm delighted you mentioned hours of work as well, because I was curious about that. And the absence of stress bit is also key, because you're a couple living together, working together, so spending time together away from work, and that doesn't always work for people either. So it's brilliant that you're on top of that one too.
So what is the secret of that success then, Jonathan? That's one of the questions that we have kind of towards the end. And there are lots of, I think you've told us lots of things. I mean, there's so much we can take away, but what would be the one
patience
thing?
and tolerance, I suppose, would be the key to it all. I think one of the main things that we're both very good at these days, and this has not always been the case at all, is we're both very good at saying no. So we say no to any work that we don't want to do. We say, if we had a client who starts taking a direction where we're thinking we don't really want to do that, then we won't advise on it. We'll resign from doing the job, in the nicest possible way. So I think I spent quite a lot of my career thinking that I always had to say yes, and I always had to help the client, and I always had to, put myself out to do things. And I think now I've reached the point where, we do what we're comfortable doing, and, we'll explain that in the nicest possible way to people, that we're no longer, if that's what they want to do, we're no longer the best people to help them do it. And I think doing that has helped us stay focused, but also keeps us just a lot happier, and that is a lot less stress-free if we stay in our own lane.
I think that is wonderful, and it really is, I think, one of the secrets to your success. It probably doesn't explain how you achieved this level of success, because at the outset it might have been more challenging to say no, to turn clients away, and not, you now have that control. You're earning the odd client leaving is not going to have a significant impact on turnover, particularly as you've got a waiting list. Are you happy to share your average fee per client, or would you rather not?
So somebody'd have to do the maths. We've about 100 limited companies, and we've about 120 sole traders. Yeah. So just over 2,000-ish a year. Everyone, well, not everyone. About 85% of the clients pay us monthly direct debit. So in terms of, I suppose, any sort of, I mentioned before, like, having good clients. I mean, it's far easier to be in this position when you're already in this position. If you're just starting out in practice, then you've got bills to pay, and you haven't got enough work to feed the family. Then you can't. You have to do what you have to do. Yeah. And I suppose the thing to just keep in mind is that you can get to a position where you have good clients, and so you need to recognize what a good client is, and you need to try and at least pivot your business so that you are more likely to get those sorts of clients. And you can do those things even when when you're building your practice. You can at least turn your attention into trying to get the best ones, and not get bogged down with with working really, really hard for little money for people who aren't grateful for what you do.
100%, absolutely with you on that, and very well summarized as well, I'd say. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously we talk about mistakes, and we'd already said that actually all the mistakes you made were in the early days, and you set up this new business, this new firm, with all of that understanding. And so you've just said it's easier for you guys now because you've had all that experience. But one of the things I would always say is, just because you need to put food on the table, like you said, it doesn't mean that you can't at some point become more strategic and think about, who am I enjoying working with, and how can we kind of get rid of these others in the nicest way possible. And that is about being strategic and being thoughtful, isn't it? Which is exactly what you've talked about all the way through this.
Yeah, and I have a real belief that there are loads of good clients out there. There's loads of bad ones, but there are loads of good ones. And if you turn your attention and focus on trying to have the good clients, then everything becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Well, I think we've probably come to an end, Mark, unless there's a burning question that is still hanging from your side, because it's really been packed full of kind of insights here and learning for other people. But I guess the last thing to say really is, how should somebody get in touch with you, Jonathan, to go onto the waiting list? What is the best way of being even considered for that very, very precious status?
Oh, well, to actually become a client, make us laugh or make us cry would probably be the two ways of fast tracking. But in terms of any practitioners, I mean, I'm more than happy to sort of chat to people on like LinkedIn if somebody wants sort of to ask a specific question or anything, and that's I'm happy to help. So LinkedIn would be a good way.
Thank you very much for that. And Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and your practice Insight 101?
Yeah, LinkedIn again, or go onto my website where you can book a discovery call, insight101.co.uk. And Mark, how about you?
Well, online everywhere, as you know, I'm Bookmark Lee. My business card is even a bookmark. I'm on LinkedIn as well, and I welcome hearing from any sole practitioner accountants or anybody in larger firms who wants me to speak at their events. But that's it. If you've enjoyed the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, please share the love online. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast, and let us have your feedback too.
Yeah. Obviously, just reach out to either Mark or myself. We'd really like to see you on a future podcast. So that's it. Thanks again to Jonathan and Mark. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast or anywhere else you might meet us, goodbye and have a good rest of the week.